First You Think is a not-for-profit ministry of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Support us at ucdsm.org today.
So can I tell you all something? When I was a kid, when I was your age, I got in line every Sunday. Every Sunday we got in a single file line, and the minister, well, we called him a priest, gave us something. Every single Sunday. It was not, however, a car or a fidget or a toy. We got a little wafer of bread, and then, you won't believe me when I tell you this, then we took a sip of wine, and then we sat down, and we did that every Sunday. I wonder if there are any other grown-ups here who had that experience as children. Yeah. So this was a ritual we did every Sunday, and you're probably wondering, that seems different than a car. Why would you get up and have a wafer of bread and a sip of wine? Well, that I'm happy to answer. In 3 of the Gospels in the New Testament, Jesus is hanging out with his friends, and they're having a meal, and he says, I want you to take some bread and drink some wine and do it to remember me. And so, as Christians, we did that every Sunday to remember Jesus. And that ritual of getting in a line, getting your little cracker, your little sip, and then sitting down was called communion. Communion is a very big, long word that's from Latin that, I'm not taking questions this morning, okay, I promise you. Communion is a big word that means like in fellowship together, doing something important together. And we did a bread and wine communion every Sunday. You all just did a Matchbox car communion. And then when that didn't work for everyone, we did a fidgets and stickers chaotic communion, right? And I'm thinking about that because today is a special flower communion day. So about 103 years ago, that's a long time, there was a minister named Norbert Capek. And he lived in Prague, which is in the Czech Republic. And Norbert Capek was a very good minister. He grew up getting bread, sip of wine, go sit down. And as a minister, he would do that. He would give, let me turn that off. He would give bread, wine, everyone go sit down. But as Reverend Capek started to grow up in his ministry and think about what he believed and what he didn't believe, he realized that that wasn't working for him anymore. So he became a Unitarian. And he founded a church, and that church was very big because he was a very good minister and they were a very good congregation. And he realized that his old beliefs had changed. Like, I used to like Matchbox cars, but now I don't, right? And so as this church grew, and he realized he was still handing this diverse, pluralist community bread and wine every Sunday. And he thought, maybe there's a better way to do this. So not unlike the basket of fidgets, he created a flower communion. He said, on your way to church next Sunday, can you just grab a flower from the roadside, from your yard? Don't take it from someone else's yard. And then we'll all gather them here. And instead of coming in a line and here's your bread and here's your wine, go sit down, take a flower. And that was the first flower communion. And now Unitarian Universalist churches all across America do flower communions. You can tell that I moved from Wisconsin because I thought the end of May would be when things flower. Noted. Now, Elijah is going to tell a fuller story about Reverend Capek's life and flower communion in a few minutes. But here I need to point out something hard. Because Reverend Capek was the kind of minister who preached about love and possibility and enthusiasm and compassion and joy, that didn't go over well with everyone. Because, of course, he lived in Europe in the 30s. There were authoritarians at the time, Nazis, who did not like what he said. So they arrested Reverend Capek. They put him in a prison called Dachau. And he died there in 1942. Now, as it so often happens, people who feel angry and scared and threatened, like their whole way of making sense is under attack, sometimes choose to claim power and push other people down so they can feel bigger and stronger. And when they arrested Norbert Capek, I assume they thought that maybe now he'll feel small and scared and angry. But the thing is, it never works to take someone as big-hearted as Reverend Capek and try and crush his spirit. It didn't work with Gandhi. It didn't work with Reverend Dr. King. It didn't work with Nelson Mandela. And it certainly didn't work with Reverend Capek. Do you know what Reverend Capek did at Dachau? He taught his fellow prisoners flower communion. where they would gather dandelions or any other wildflowers that would find a way to grow in the cracks of that horrible cement. He also wrote poems. Can you imagine? Here's a poem translated into English called Holy Enthusiasm. When a holy enthusiasm seizes the heart, your face lights up. You feel like a star singing. Your very soul, hearing the song, is radiant. It was, and it will be again. With the sun on our brows, enthusiasm will bloom once more. With paradise in our hearts, clouds will disappear, and the sun's rays bring the earth back to life. The sun of your hope will shine again along the dangerous narrows of your life, bringing warmth and light. In the air of freedom, peace, and happiness. It was, and it will be again. Courage will be a stir in the air and prompt you to action to create warmth in harmony with the highest and nearest friend. Success will attend you. It was, and it will be again. You would embrace the whole world, have peace touch every flower. You would like to give yourself away completely to everybody. Forgive everything. Play host to everyone. You would lift this earth to heaven. It was, and it will be again. I think that's a beautiful poem. That feeling of holy enthusiasm that seizes the heart and lights up the face and radiates the soul. In my favorite line, you feel like a star singing. Do you know that feeling? Do you know that feeling of holy enthusiasm, that sense that you and the universe are aligned, that you are now onto something big and beautiful and important? It's a feeling like electricity coursing through your body. It's like when the choir sang, "Can you imagine a world of compassion?" And I say, yes, I can imagine that. And to this feeling, to this holy enthusiasm about what the world could be, Reverend Capek says, it was, and it will be again. It was at one point a world that had some warmth and light, and it will be again. It was a world that showed some freedom and peace and happiness for people, and it will be again. Now, good writers don't just write in the abstract, they write for their audience, right? Who was Reverend Capek writing these poems for? Can you imagine at Dachau being starved and beaten and worked to death? A place designed to ruin people spiritually and physically, because the people running the camp did not see the people in the camp as human. And here in that space, Reverend Capek dares to write, you would embrace the whole world, have peace touch every flower. You would like to give yourself away completely to everyone. Can you imagine what that would have sounded like to the people in his cabin as he read it? How strange that would be. No, Reverend, I would like to get out of here. I would like to hide. I would like to armor myself against this living horror. But he would continue. Forgive everything. Play host to everyone. No, Reverend, on that you are asking too much. And he continues, you would lift this earth to heaven. Reverend, as you can see, earth has become hell. Earth has never been like heaven. And all he can say is, it was, and it will be again. Here, take this flower. Do this in remembrance. Communion used to give life, literally. When Jesus broke bread and wine with his friends, it was an actual meal. It was a Passover Seder. It was a very important meal. And when his earliest disciples gathered to remember what he had taught them, they continued this by feeding each other with real bread and wine. Considering how much scarcer food was in the ancient Near East, a meal was life-giving. Now, when I was a kid, eating that stale, thin wafer on a stomach full of donuts? Thank you, Dad. Communion was a ritual. It was divorced from its holy enthusiasm from which it was born. So I think about Reverend Capek's congregation, the Unitarians in Prague in 1923, and what did they need as they recovered from the devastating Great War, World War I, which killed 20 million souls? They did not need a ritualistic wafer. They needed something greater. They needed a holy enthusiasm, a reminder of what the world was and will be again. They did not need in that moment a commitment to submit to one true dogma, one true church, one true way to be holy. They needed a commitment to the irrepressible joy, to the uncontrollable abundance, to the unmanageable diversity of flowers. You cannot stop flowers from blooming, even in the most horrifying situations. They will find the crack in the pavement and they will insist on beauty. And what are the flowers of humanity? Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Baha'i, pagan, humanists, religious naturalism, atheism and agnosticism, mystics, Hindus, panentheists. You know what? I realize as I try to catalog the ways that we bloom, it's like trying to catalog these flowers. It kind of misses the point, and it reduces the wonder and the beauty of the garden. And what do we need to flower? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross offers, if we make our goal to live a life of compassion and unconditional love, then the world will indeed become a garden where all kinds of flowers can bloom and grow. Let me say that again. If we make our goal to live a life of compassion and unconditional love, you would like to embrace the whole world, then the world will indeed become a garden where all kinds of flowers can bloom and grow. That it was and will be again. That your ethical and spiritual practice was rich and meaningful and holy to you, and it will be again. That this church was life-giving and life-saving to you, and it will be again. That this state was compassionate and equitable to Iowans, and will be again. That our nation was working toward its dream unfinished of liberty for all before we spiraled into this authoritarianism, and it will be again. That even when you find yourself in the worst place humanity has ever built, designed to kill your body and spirit, even there, poetry and beauty and, yes, flowers will find a way to bloom, to embrace this world's capacity for beauty, this community's capacity for beauty, your heart's capacity for beauty, until we can again dwell together with more peace and more thriving, that you would lift this earth to heaven. It was, and it will be again. Amen.